This is called Broken Honker. Each year with my friends, I go hunting or fishing. Though I never catch much, it's a real fun tradition. When we fished, I got seasick. With scuba, the bends. Maybe it's time I should make some new friends. But this year, it's geese, so I went to the traders. I bought a gun, shot shells, and some waders. I donned waders and camo, but I felt like a fool sitting out there on my three-legged stool. I came along just to form a male bond. I did not watch for birds, I just sat there and yawned. I started to nod, then I started to snore. Then along came a goose I could not ignore. He circled my head. Then here's what he did. On his webbed feet, he stopped with a skid. When it comes to birds, I'm a bit of a knave. But I've never heard of a goose who's so brave. I normally don't find waterfowl to be cute, but he held up his wings and he shouted, "Don't shoot!" I couldn't blurt out even one word before he proceeded to tell an incredible story. Although he'd perfected speaking with words, he'd lost his ability to honk with the birds. He said, "When we fly, I purposely straggle. Without honking, I can't feel like part of the gaggle." Although his vocabulary might seem without bounds, he could not make any normal goose sounds. He said not to baby him. He fits in where he can. His friends are Canadian, but he speaks American. "Since I can't honk like that bunch of Canucks, I'd rather talk turkey with American ducks." I won't here present all the Canadian slurs he rattled off in an accent reminiscent of Jersey. He said, "I'm not racist, but what can I say? If they speak without honking, they lose me at A." His Canadian friends think his accent is classy. "They covet my winters in South Tallahassee." He seemed so expressive. I was at a loss, but communication was this goose's albatross. I asked him to honk. I just wanted to help. When he opened his mouth, it was more of a yelp. I asked how it happened. I admitted I was curious. I hoped that my questions would not make him furious. "Up in the sky, I was honking and flapping. My honker worked great. Then guess what happened?" he asked, and I took the bait. "I'm dying to know," I said. "Please tell me." He said, "We cruised low in a beautiful V. I opened my bill and I started choking, and the next thing I knew, my honker was broken." When he stopped, a fresh honk broke clear through the sky. I saw him look up with his beady goose eye. "I hear them up there. It's driving me bonkers. They don't know how lucky they are to have honkers." I said, to my ear, his voice sang when he spoke. He said, "My talker works fine. It's my honker that's broke." I had never attended the Hunter Academy, so I never learned much about gander anatomy. I told him I'm sorry for my lack of knowledge. I blamed both the system and community college. I blamed my degree in the liberal arts to excuse my ignorance of goose noise-making parts. I explained I knew little beyond wing and feather, but the talker and honker, I thought, worked together. Again, I explained my education was local, but aren't talking and honking both vocal? He closed eyes, furrowed brow, touched his head, and he quacked, "What's wrong with you now? Are you mentally handicapped? You're looking at me and you're hearing me speak. Can't you tell that these sounds are produced in the beak?" I explained that I'd never seen geese up so close, and those I had seen were not so verbose. Again, I conceded to his expertise. I said, "Explain it to me, like I was your niece. If we put heads together, perhaps we can conquer the mysterious loss of your once ample honker." He huffed and he puffed, then he said, and I quote, "We talk from the beak, we honk from the throat." This goose was a blubbering, emotional wreck. Then he said, "What's that there, on the string, on your neck?" I reached for my chest. My cold fingers were wrangling to take hold of the goose call that I'd left there dangling. He knew I was hunting. No reason to hide it. I gave him the call, and quickly he tried it. He cleared out his throat. It was quite the production. Then he made a great honk with little instruction. I was proud of my calling, though not narcissistic, but I'd never produced a honk so realistic. and the goose started crying. He made quite the commotion. I was taken aback to see him show such emotion. I said, "Don't be sad. I cannot debate. Your proficient calling seems to be second nature." He said, "Please excuse my lack of decorum. I'll hold back my tears for a less formal forum. I need some more practice, but in that first crack, it felt like I had my old Honker back." I said not a word. I just gave him a peck. And I fastened the string of the call round his neck. Then, with my call, my new friend did abscond, and I watched as he dropped it soaring over the pond. Down it did fall, and it made a kerplunk. Then, without my call, my false friend made a honk. When I had the chance, I should have strangled that goose, or fashioned that lanyard into a noose. I chambered a shell, but he had flown too far, so I emptied my gun, intent to chase him by car. On a wing and a prayer, he circled back to sass me. "Perhaps I'll see you in South Tallahassee." Through all the commotions that I was confronting, one thing was clear. I was done hunting. I'd hunt no more geese. I was calling it quits. The geese won this battle in a war of the wits. But each year, when it warms, my wife takes great peace in finding some water and feeding some geese. This year was no different, but I readied the bread, while the goose war raged on inside of my head. We found some fat birds in a field that was swamped. They spoke not a word. These jerks only honked. They fought for that bread, like hogs at a trough. They swallowed it down, and then they flew off. The geese floated upon, but then fell from the breeze, because my bread was laced with fresh antifreeze. We walked back to the truck, my sweet wife unaware. She held hands with a man who had just won a war.